Okay, super. I think everyone is in, so that's great. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Alice Hancock. I am an EU correspondent for the Financial Times. I cover climate energy industry amongst other bits and pieces in my beat. And I'm delighted to see all you here today and to be joined by a very erudite lineup of panelists to discuss this topic, which I think actually it's a very pertinent one as we start the 2024-2029 mandate. And obviously on the day that the Commission has launched its competitiveness compass, which addresses a lot of these topics and the roadmap and decarbonisation and how we're going to reach the net zero goals that we've set. So to introduce everyone that I have here, I have on the far end here, Tom Howes, Advisor for Green Energy Transition and Energy Market Regulation at DG ENER in the European Commission. Thanks for being here. Raphael Hanoteaux, who is the Senior Policy Advisor at the think tank E3G. I have Benjamin Lakatos, who is Chairman and CEO of the energy company Met Group, and Dr. Samuele Furfari, who is Professor in Energy Geopolitics at the Free University in Brussels and ESCP Business School. Thank you all for being here. We will have some time for Q&A at the end, so do please prepare your most astute and pointed questions. I will look forward to them. And if you're watching us online, because I know we do have a good online audience today, you can put your questions in Slido, in the chat in Slido with the hashtag Energy4Europe, which has a capital E, 4 in the numerical form, and capital E for Europe, of course. So to start, I mean, of course, Europe's energy markets are in transition, and we're transitioning away from fossil fuels, we hope, and towards a greener, renewable future. But we're also transitioning, of course, away, to become more energy secure continent, away from unreliable partners. And when we talk about these transitions, of course, gas plays a role. And so I'd really love to, that's the kind of nub that we really wanted to explore today. I just wanted to, Tom, from the Commission side, of course, it would be great if you could just give us a flavour to kick us off about how the Commission really sees the future of the EU's energy market in that context, and where gas plays a role in achieving the central policy aim, which is, of course, more globally competitive European economy, as well as a decarbonised one.
Well, I think for a few years now, we've had the idea of net zero and the 2050 objective, and there have been various views on how fast or how slow that is, and whether there was a tension. There was the energy trilemma between making an energy system sustainable or affordable or secure, and there were seen to be some tensions there. I think for me, what changed in particular was the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the gas spike, gas crisis, energy crisis that triggered. Since then, and we already saw it when the Commission produced the REPowerEU package in response to the crisis, there's a sense that yes, we desperately needed to replace Russian gas with whatever in the short term, which includes a lot of other gas. So we've been importing a lot of LNG. And in the short term, there hasn't been much choice given our housing heating needs or industrial heating needs and other gas needs that we need to replace the gas in the immediate term. But the fact that we've had volatile, scary gas prices and threats to supply mean that there's less, if you like, there's less of a trilemma than we thought, insofar as is now renewables where we think the prices are going down, where we will be harvesting indigenous sunlight and wind and other renewables. So the security dimension has shifted, and it's more aligned than it used to be with the energy transition, and similarly for affordability. So in that sense, there's I think the trade-offs are fewer than they used to be. Having said that, we are busy replacing Russian gas with whatever we possibly can. Sometimes that's efficiency, and we've reduced gas consumption and other aspects of energy consumption. Sometimes it's renewables, but it is also LNG. Our expectations are that trend continues. We still have the projections of 2040, and the new Commission will come out with the detail on what a 2040 target regime and policy regime looks like, but it will include less gas, less fossil gas. There's already the discussion with gas companies and on infrastructure about how the gas infrastructure, the gas community translates itself into a sustainable world, which means more biogas, which means the hydrogen narrative. So there's a clear pathway there in terms of reduced fossil gas consumption, an ongoing role for the players in this field as they themselves change their business models, the fuels they deal with, and the way they use infrastructure to be part of the energy transition and the decarbonized world of the future.
And in the very short term, just to sort of understand how the Commission is seeing this, what kind of levers do you see to pull to reduce, because energy costs is something that comes up a lot. People, of course, say, you know, Europe has structurally higher energy costs, 3 to 4 times higher than the US. But just to give us an idea of what kind of things you're looking at in the Affordable Energy Plan, what kind of levers you can pull to meet the goals, the decarbonisation goals, but also reduce those costs.
Yes, I think when we do come out with the Clean Industrial Deal and the Affordable Energy Action Plan, which comes out, it's all due on the 26th of February. I'm not sure you'll be amazed by the unicorns that we're pulling out of the hat. We're asking now the same questions we asked during the energy crisis. And I'm not sure that the tools have changed particularly since then. We had the toolbox, which was a mix of things we can do in the short term with European money already, and we have started to do that. The toolbox was also about what member states could do in terms of national tax regimes or tariff regimes, and short-term measures that their regulators and system operators could take. Everything that we've done since is building on that. We've had new legislation. We had the market design revision, and the new more ambitious targets on efficiency and renewables with Repower EU. So everything that we're going to we're not changing direction in any sense, and I don't think there'll be any brand unicorns. What we do need to do, and we've seen, despite the crisis, we've seen quite a slow transposition or effective transposition of a lot of European legislation. So a lot of the emphasis already of the new Commission is on proper and complete and thorough implementation. You know, we know that the creation of flexibility in the electricity markets, which now partly comes, well, a lot of it comes from flexible gas in the power market. That transition is meant to be made with greater flexibility of demand and of the introduction of batteries. And there's a regulatory framework there to make that market appear and grow, but we're being slow to implement that. It was in the 2019 legislation, the Clean Energy Package. We're now going through the final stages of the network code to cement that. So we're meant to get a lot of growth from the new legislation. So I think a lot of the actions will be working out new ways or clearer ways to engage at every level with member states, but also with industry stakeholders or with regions, national regulators, whoever we need to make sure that the implementation of these regimes happen as soon as possible, so that the efficient electricity market and other aspects of the energy market we want are functioning, and those efficiencies will be cost savings in themselves.
Excellent. So more engagement with industry, which gives me a perfect reason to bring in Benjamin on this point. We were just having a very interesting discussion about, you know, Europe's trajectory and also the potential for sort of long-term contracts and what that looks like when you've got certain goals in mind and what a competitive energy market looks like. So I was wondering if you could just tell us a bit more about what role, or tell them what you were just telling me, and probably in fact, what role can a company like yours play in helping policymakers bring down prices and improve the picture for European industry as a whole in the transition away from fossil fuels?
Thanks. Initially, I came with 2 goals. I wanted to a little bit shake up this discussion towards the efficiency instead of affordability. And that's alone, maybe a little bit, I'm late with that. I think this is happening now everywhere around the world. But being an industry player, I'm very happy to hear how you summarize the whole picture, because that's for me already a step forward compared to a year ago. I think the biggest probably request or criticism which is coming from us is I don't debate the direction. I'm a natural gas player, basically, who is moving towards the green world, and we are buying and we are aligned with the green transition. But I'm not alone with this. They're a little bit challenged that we need a little more reliance how the rules are changing, because I personally also believe that the competition could play a bigger role to force prices down and help your agenda. But sometimes we are not able to really work out, because markets needs time. We need time react, and the rules are changing sometimes too fast for us. So we start to walk in this direction, and then we have to change our direction too fast. So that's, if we can ask something from an industry side into that, that's definitely something, less frequency of regulatory changes on one side into the debate. And the second one, I wanted to hit a kind of voice in this that which is rare probably, which is more a criticism on the industry, on us as well, that we constantly criticize regulators or also national governments that we cannot fulfill our destiny or make profits. How we see the current energy markets. I would probably summarize a little bit our market view, because then I understand. So I believe that the gas transition is going to take longer than we assume today, and we are saying this since long, but the direction is right. So I think the long-term future should look like power-based. I think in 50, maybe 100 years from now, we should have only power. But we think in the gas industry, in the midstream European gas industry, but not to use the existing infrastructure, which we already have. It's just not smart because it costs a lot of money. So we suggest to use the already existing infrastructure. We also fully support the Draghi report in this respect. I challenge the report only on one territory, and that's the new infrastructure. I believe that the existing natural gas infrastructure is enough from a market perspective. We should finish the ongoing investments. So there are still projects around Europe after FID. Maybe we could debate few interconnectors, maybe one more LNG terminal south, but more or less we have the infrastructure. And what we argue for, that let's use this advantage that we have a great infrastructure and we have a centralized market that's also rarely discussed, but we see on the market that the existence of the integrated energy market in Europe, that's actually a value. We rarely see few topics where Europe were able to increase the global influence. And the existence of a TTF as a reference price is such kind of influence. We consider the existence of TTF almost like an existence of a euro from an industry perspective. So that's a big value. So I'm also giving back a lot of credit in this. But what we say, we believe with a little more market forces, we could achieve more. And I'm also challenging our own industry all around this. I think we are also could do more on the prices. And the ultimate statement is that I believe the price level is a real issue. And so basically what I'm a little bit challenging was the priority order within the Trinity, because we have to achieve, we call Trinity the triangle you mentioned. We don't debate the whole concept. Challenge is what is the most important and who should do what. And my argument, we should focus a little bit more on efficiency because I think the next level is to be competitive, drive the prices down, and use this energy or money to achieve the ultimate goal.
Just to drill briefly into that before I bring in the others, I mean, you mentioned the industry could do more on prices. That would be driven by efficiency, you think, or other tools?
Also, so I already give you before the few examples that which are standard market practices, but so not just the regulators or the public was hit by this crisis, but the industry as well. I mean, and everybody wants to survive in the industry, and what every corporate does when a challenge or a change is happening, that you build up reserves, right? You cut your credit lines, you increase your financial reserves, you borrow more money. Banks are increasing their collaterals, they increase their cost. If I add up all these effects, that's a huge element of the price as of today. If we could bring back trust in each other to the system, that would lower the price easily 20-30%. That's my guess.
Okay, 20-30%. Samuele, I wanted to bring you in here. And I saw you nodding somewhat when Benjamin was saying that, you know, the gas transition might take longer than we think. Do you think the EU's projections for its transition away from gas are too ambitious? And what does that look like in the kind of broader geopolitical context? I think it should just be on, actually.
I think that one of the big mistakes in the energy policy is to ignore, or let's say another way, to believe that everything is electricity. When I was working on the green paper on energy efficiency, I found that statistics, and we had a lot of statistics. Well, I was in the commission. I was working in the commission. A lot of statistics on electricity, on fuel for transport, and there was nothing on heating. And so I called the colleagues in Eurostat in Luxembourg, and it was a Greek named Nicolas. Say, Nicolas, I do not find the data for heating. And he answered, we do not have data. How is it possible? We do not have it because there is no market for heating. And so we start to work on that. It took me 6 years to convince the general director to look at that topic. And finally, we are working, the commission start to work on heating. The fact is that electricity represents 22% of the final energy demand. And when you look at wind and solar, you are dealing with this 22%. If we do not reach 100% of renewable electricity with wind and solar, and we are very far from that, why should we talk about electrifying the 78% remaining? That's the base of the mistake that the EU and Parliament are doing. We just focus on the 22%. With nuclear is the same thing, 22%. We have to look at the rest. And nearly all the rest is flames. And to burn, you need gas or coal or oil, but let's focus on gas. And therefore, if we forget that we need flames for all the other uses in industry, in dwelling, we will miss the point. It's why we will continue to use massive quantity of gas. And I've been very disappointed that Mr. Draghi in his report say that it will be nearly finished in 2010, in 5-year time. How can you say that in 5-year time we will stop gas? 70% of the gas used in Europe is for burning outside power plants. So the future for sure is burning gas in Europe. Furthermore, we need gas also for the chemical industry. Why the German industry in such a disarray? Because they do not have cheap gas anymore for their chemical plant. Methane is the base of industrial chemistry, particularly to produce hydrogen. Hydrogen is produced from methane. And so if we want to have hydrogen, we will need to develop the use of gas. And a last thing that we have to say also that the load factor of windmill in Europe over 5 years is 23%. And the load factor for solar panel, the average for the EU, is 11%. That means that you can install as much wind and solar panel you want, you will need the backup. It's impossible to do that without backup. Nuclear cannot be flexible enough. In France, they made a lot of investment, and because they have 75% of nuclear energy. But the other countries, either they do not have nuclear, either they stop nuclear, or they do not have enough nuclear to follow the charge. So the more you install wind and solar panel, the more you need gas. You cannot escape from that. It's a reality of physics. And therefore, for sure, there is a bright future for gas in Europe.
Great, thank you. I mean, I'm going to bring Raphael in here. I feel you might have a slightly different view of this. I mean, do you agree with this point that Europe has been too focused on electricity and is not making enough space for gas and the need for it in industry and so on?
No, actually, I would have the opposite view. I think what we're seeing here is really, defense of the status quo. But I think that the world has changed tremendously since 2022, even late 2021, because the energy crisis started at that moment, and it was worsened by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and then the energy crisis and the prices that were there. I think we already knew that we are using gas from outside Europe, external suppliers. And we have seen that basically the gas that we're using, the Russian gas that we're using a lot in Germany, for example, came at quite a cheap price, but at a very high geopolitical cost. And Europe is still paying the cost of that mistake at the moment. And I think that we were talking about trilemma before, and I think that's a very interesting concept. But I think now we also have some kind of new trilemma where if you look at gas, you really have the choice now between tying yourself. The EU has a choice between tying itself to external suppliers that might not be aligned or allies. So, Russia, Qatar, Trump's US presidency. You pay a high geopolitical price, geopolitical cost, or you pay a high price because you source yourself on LNG markets that are very volatile. So the question is high price or high geopolitical cost. None of these options are suitable for the new world that we are in, where we're talking about independence, resilience, being more being more solid, being more less vulnerable to external threats and external vulnerabilities. And the third solution of that trilemma is really renewable energy efficiency and the energy transition. This is where basically, and the Draghi report shows it, this is where you have lower costs, you have more independence, and then you have also, you're not depending anymore on the former idea of externally sourcing your supplies. I think that's in a very uncertain world with a very volatile geopolitical landscape, betting on deliveries from Qatar, where you see that then the Red Sea might be closed or you have issues there, or betting on the US that is our allies today, but is talking about invading Greenland tomorrow. It's also, I think, a risky gambit. And I'm really thinking that the more and the faster we phase down gas, the easier it will be for the EU's economy to be more resilient, but also have cheaper prices for energy, because the gas is still setting the price for electricity at the moment. And part of this is really to electrify, and that should really be the focus, because I think that's saying, we have 22% of electricity in the final energy mix, therefore we shouldn't aim at having more than that is kind of a weird argument. To me, if we only have 22%, we should just try to get better and have more electricity, and that electricity be made for more renewable. So that's, I think, the priority.
Mm-hmm.
If I can make a short comment on that, I think from my perspective here, four of us, we demonstrated the industry problem exactly. So because there were a lot of truths in all the statements, and I could individually agree in many items of the statements, and what we claim for is pragmatism. So finally we should get out of this. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but my personal answer is, let's use the existing infrastructure because we need this, and it would be stupid to throw away, reduce the cost. But meanwhile, let's invest into innovation, which would target a very different future, because I think it's an overall mistake to be exposed to any supply, 90%. I mean, the EU is having 90% export on natural gas. I mean, that's factually a wrong structure. Sorry, I just wanted to make this comment.
No, please.
So let's be a little more pragmatic.
Sure. I will come back to you in just 1 minute, but I wanted to ask Tom here just because a lot of this is about the speed at which we make this transition, with the speed at which, how long we use gas for. So I just wondered if you could give us a flavor of the Commission's thinking on speeding up the electrification process, how, we can talk about permitting and all these kind of things, but what is the current thinking, especially when we're particularly thinking about the hard to decarbonize industries at the moment, on really getting electrification into there, or green hydrogen, when we see that green hydrogen projects have not been having wild amount of success at the moment?
Yes, I mean, the short answer is we are not moving fast enough in any of the things that we're doing, whether it's the implementation of legislation, the creation of the flexibility markets, the innovation, development of demonstration plants for new technologies for cheaper, cleaner hydrogen, green hydrogen, or whatever it is. So on every front, we need to speed up what we're doing on a daily basis. In terms of the overall time horizon, we still have the net zero by 2050 goals. We have benchmarks which give us a clear sense of direction already for 2040. So in terms of electrification targets, the things we published already last year, the trajectory suggests that we should be about 33% electrification in final energy by 2030. I think that's around 50% by 2040 and growing thereafter. So we have a trajectory which allows for flexibility, particularly across member states. You know, it's not that every member state is marching at the same pace along exactly the same pathway to net zero. There are countries who will find it more expensive or less expensive, and they'll move faster or slower using different technologies or different market dimensions to make their own way there. So I think from our perspective, it is a fairly pragmatic narrative that we have 2040 milestones, but we have a 2050 direction. Every member state controls its energy mix and the pathways it follows to get there. But with all of it, from implementation upwards, we do need to move faster because we're already, in terms of climate objectives and temperature targets, we're well behind. If we are still playing our role of showing that one major, rich, advanced part of the world can decarbonize and develop the industries and the technologies to help the rest of the world decarbonize and therefore mitigate and adapt to climate change, which is a very big picture, we need to move faster.
Yeah, great. I'm glad you brought in that big picture, because Samuele, I actually wanted to ask you, you were sort of advocating for more of a realism and a focus on gas and just understanding that it is a part of our lives. But of course, as Tom says, the EU is trying to set itself out as a climate leader. We all acknowledge the impacts of climate change. Do you think that it's, a greater allowance for gas in the EU's energy mix might detract from its position as a climate leader overall?
I think that we have to look also what is occurring in the world. And in the world, there is a rush for nuclear and a big rush for gas. This morning, I read that Pakistan signed contract with a new LNG plant, which is at the state of building in Louisiana. It's not yet there. And Pakistan already signed contract because countries will badly need gas to grow for all the industry and also for electricity generation. So we will be the only one not to use gas in the world. I think that's very strange. Sometimes we need to go out of our ghetto and to look what is going on in the world. And in the world is just that, a rush for gas. Not because of Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump has not made an energy revolution. Mr. Trump has made a communication revolution because everything that Trump is saying was in place since years with massive investment to produce more gas in USA. And now Kazakhstan is also doing the same thing to produce shale gas. There is I'm sorry, we do not want to see that. That's not a problem. There is a dash for gas in the world, for sure. And therefore, we will be the only one to say that all those people are stupid, but we are the clever one. No, I think it's time to stop to dream. We need gas to back up the solar and wind production for the chemistry and for heating. Because don't believe that you will introduce green electricity in the industry. That's a joke. You cannot operate a glass factory, a steel factory with this type of electricity. I think we are missing the point here, really. It's not serious. It's not serious to believe that you can introduce green electricity in the industry, in the lighting, but not in the process. You believe that you are going to produce clinker, cement with wind electricity? It's just flames. We need flames. I repeat, we need flames. It could be coal if you doesn't like gas.
I think we'd rather not coal, that's for sure. I mean, Benjamin, I know Met Group, for example, is you're investing a lot in sort of greener technologies. You said you were sort of experimenting almost, so trying to see what would work and what would scale up, and hopefully to answer some of these questions for the heavy industry, sorry, making clinker and so on. How difficult is that, you know, and are there sort of hurdles in the EU that make that more challenging, or that could slow the transition to moving towards these options?
So according to our understanding, as of today, this is 100% accurate. So these industries need chemical-based energy, electricity will not work as of today. And I absolutely agree this. That's why I also share your view, or I can confirm your view, traveling outside of the EU and being a gas player, I somehow feel that is a new gas bonanza. And when I come back to Europe, that's absolutely, if I go to the US, it's cherished as of today, as it would be equal to the AI industry as a future which will give boost for the energy. And also in Asia plays an important role, but a very different communication. But what is, from my perspective, is a very big difference. It doesn't matter how we think about that, but this is happening. And there is a reality. On the other side, I like to dream. I challenge that one. So I think dreams are good. And I also think that I would not underestimate the supply security topic in this. I want to repeat that the EU is importing 90% of the natural gas consumption. And we are drifting towards the same discussion in the fertilizer industry. I think if we take ourselves serious in a global stage, we cannot afford. We just cannot have such exposure. Doesn't matter what's going on in the world. So I think that's a very hard push why we have to invest into innovation and find some ways how we can get out of this problem. And maybe the green transition is a good direction. I mean, if we anyway innovate, it maybe can come from that territory, whether it's nuclear or something completely new, I don't know. But I think that's the only way for Europe from the current situation, because we are lost this competition against the world. That's where we stand, and that's for sure.
So did you want to come in, Samuele, and then I'm going to ask Raphael to...
Yes, because I agree that unfortunately the geology do not help us in Europe to have gas. We have gas, you know, but it's private to look for it. So maybe in 10 years' time, people will realize that, yes, we should produce our own gas. It's possible. But in the meantime, we need to admit, because we have so much focus on Russia, that we do not look what is going on around the world. Gas is abundant in all continents and in many countries. When there was just a connection by pipe, it was a drama because we were connected by pipe. But now with LNG, it's finished. We can buy gas everywhere in the world. And indeed, we are in a market where the supplier wants to sell gas because there is no more risk of controlling the price and the supply like it was the case a few years ago. Do you know that Israel is a producer of gas? Israel is selling gas to Egypt, which is sending it in the market. Israel is selling gas to Jordania and even in Lebanon by the north. It's incredible. Everywhere there is gas, but in Australia for China, in Malaysia for Japan, everywhere gas is abundant. In 2014, I think, or 12, I don't, yeah, excuse me if it's not correct, the IEA published in its outlook the golden age of gas. And they were saying that we have 225 years of gas reserves. It was before the Paris Agreement. After the Paris Agreement, everything disappears. But the number were right. We are in a world of abundant gas. And there is no more room for playing geopolitics because you can change where you want to buy gas.
The problem, of course, with burning that gas is obviously the emissions, which I'm sure I would be interested to know, should the EU engage in this dash for gas, and what other options can do you discuss at E3G for heavy industries, which will find it harder to move to electrification?
Yeah, just to say that I think that maybe it's a generational issue, right? But I find that a lot of the arguments that I'm hearing today are kind of right out of the 90s, end of history type of arguments. Arguments that say, yeah, we can source gas everywhere because, the econometrics work and, we have no problem. We have everyone is an ally and we just engage in trade relationship with everyone. I think the world is a bit more complicated than that. I think now we've seen China, we've seen what happens, new wars happening. We are seeing a movement towards more independence and, a EU that would be more resilient and more assertive. And I find that what I find extremely problematic in this 90s argument is really that it lacks two fundamental things. First, it lacks the climate argument, right? In the 90s, you could claim that, yeah, it works in my economic model, so it's fine. The reality is that gas leaks all along the value chain, and that methane is much more potent as a greenhouse gas than CO2 is. Over a shortened time period, we can debate that if you want, but that's something that is...
Say the truth, say everything. John, don't say that it's very bad.
Over a shorter time period. So it is a greenhouse gas. It is a problem. So it lacks the climate argument. We do have a climate emergency. We're seeing that over and over again. We've seen just now in France very big issues with water swelling. So it's something that is happening and is lacking from the conversation. The second thing that is lacking is the people. And when Professor Furfari is saying it's prohibited to drill gas, for example, look at the Netherlands. Go talk to the Dutch in Groningen, for example. Why is it prohibited? Because the inhabitants that live along and around the gas fields asked for it to stop because it was creating earthquake and it was destroying the cities. So, I mean, if you don't care about the people at all, yeah, you can drill anywhere. And if you don't care about the climate, you can also have very cheap gas and very cheap oil. But I think that we have new requirements and a new paradigm, a new framework to think into. This is not the 90s anymore. This is not the end of history and everyone is an ally. It's much more complicated than that. We need more real politics and we need to take into account the geopolitical challenges that exist. And I don't think gas fits in any of these new challenges that we're seeing today.
It's very interesting, of course, obviously in the US with Trump presenting his drill baby drill agenda. But of course in China, we see a huge speed up of renewables. Obviously there's a lot of issues, they need to get off coal and so on. But I'm just wondering, of course, President von der Leyen said that we should perhaps buy more US LNG in the short term. I mean, just to come back to the practicalities of it, to make sure that we can come off Russian gas and to maintain energy prices. I just wondered how that would actually look. I mean, obviously the Commission is not a gas buyer, but it can make certain political signals, I suppose, to the industry. And what is the thinking around buying more US LNG or indeed increasingly diversifying our supply in this new mandate?
Well, it ticks a lot of boxes. I mean, there's the political signals going out already. There is the tool that the Commission has created. It created during the crisis of market aggregation to bring purchasers together to have an impact and leave a greater access to gas markets. But with the current US government, it looks like it's going to be relatively easy for us to both improve our trade deficit relations with the US. And by buying more LNG from the US. So that is a nice short-term answer to various issues.
So I was going to say, how does it tie in if you need to have a long-term contract with this, with the hope for coming off gas in 2030, 2040?
Well, I mean, long-term contracts signed now are maximum, well, they seem to be about 20 years. Half of them are 15 years. I've seen contracts for 4 years. So those are variable. That's at the moment it's the private market operators, the suppliers and purchasers who are determining the nature of those contracts. It's for both parties to determine whether they can the supplier hold out for nice 20-year contracts because that's what they've always had, or will they have to adapt to a changing global market for gas and accept that, at least in the European market, 20-year contracts as from within the next 5 years won't be a viable contract for a European purchaser because of our clear direction of travel. So commercial contracts can change depending on the state of the market. They'll do that on a daily basis. We changed in terms of gas pricing moving away from, for instance, oil price based contracts to the TTF. So markets will change and adapt and reflect these changes. So I don't really have a fear that we're going to be locked in. It's already discussion. 15-year contracts, okay, they take us to 2040 or so, but there's still 10 years before net zero there, and it's a changing market, so that won't be a constraint.
So we are one of those companies. We are talking to the US producers and buying LNG, and constantly I have to defend the European players, because what I get at not just from the producers but also from policymakers in the US, that they don't understand why the Europeans just not signing these contracts. You have to understand that if somebody signs a 20-year long contract for LNG, with 25, you get a better price if you sign a 5 or a 10 years contract. So the price is lower, because some of the infrastructure, they're very pragmatic. They say, if you sign this, then I build this infrastructure. Anyway, I have the natural gas via fracking. I will produce for you, and that is yours. The problem for the Europeans, talking also to some other European market players, that I mean, we were a little bit uncertain on the legislation, what this zero emission means to us. I mean, now we are in 2025. If we sign a 20-year contract, we are going to be in 2045. And I really having, I mean, sorry for my colleagues, especially in those companies who are working for state-owned energy companies, because most of the market players are somehow state-related. Imagine a management who has to make a decision, who gets this, sorry to say, but difficult to understand the deadlines, what they have to deliver in the green transition. But meanwhile, they should sign 20 years contract with the US. So for me, as a private company, and we owned by the management, for us, it's a little bit easier, because we made our belief. We believe that the gas will hold longer to Europe. That's why we signed the contract. But we are risking our own money. But that's a territory where a little more precise communication and a little more clarity would help the industry for sure.
Can I just say, I don't think in the history of the world, a commercial sector has had greater clarity and stability in the direction of travel and expectations. Whether, I mean, for a start, it's European, it's not national. So you're dealing with one direction of policy. And there have always been risks throughout the history of capitalism, whether that's war or just economic recession or rising interest rates. There is uncertainty there. There's all sorts of devices that clever commercial people have come up with to manage risk and develop all sorts of markets for that. So I think
I'm not saying it cannot be much worse than this, but I'm saying it can be better.
Okay, I'm glad the Commission, you were defending yourselves then. I think that was very fair. Samuele, you wanted to make a point on this one.
I'm free, so I will be more open than you have been. Big European companies like ENER or Total are buying gas everywhere in the world with contract of 25 years, not to deliver to the EU, but in the other countries. And then they have very good price. We are not able to do that because we are afraid of climate change, and therefore we pay the price. There is no miracle. When we had long-term contract in the past, it was to have good price, and it's normal. Business is like that. And so we are going to pay more and more our gas, and therefore our electricity, and we will continue to lose our competitiveness. So simple.
No, please.
No, it's not so simple. But Sam, please tell us, what's your climate policy? What's your vision of the world without a European climate policy?
No, it's not you should not ask me this. Go in
Well,
Pakistan.
you're telling us every other aspect except
go in Pakistan and India and ask them the question.
I think, yeah, I was actually going to say, Raphael, here, it would be good to bring you in because obviously everyone has different decarbonisation targets, and ideally Europe is meant to be leading the way on this, as we've discussed. But it would be good to hear from, obviously, we had the Green Deal targets. This was von der Leyen's man on the moon policy in the last mandate, and there has been a level of realism creep in because we have seen the European industries struggling. So from a pro-climate think tank point of view, what are the kind of short-term answers that we can provide to industry that don't involve burning more fossil fuels on a large scale?
Yeah. So I'm glad you picked that up because that was also something that was said before, and I think it's kind of a half truth about industry decarbonization. Latest, and I'm not challenging your own industry or your own expertise, but I think overall, industry is not only cement kilns or a very high heat examples. The latest reports that were I think quite widespreadly agreed were that 90% of process heat can be electrified. So it really means that there is actually a lot that can be electrified. It's not because, people think about industry, you think about hard hats and, it's very hot, but industry is much more than that. And you have some processes obviously cannot be electrified. They can be, you can do hydrogen, you can do green hydrogen, you can do blue hydrogen, but you have some issues where you're still burning thing if that's what you really wish for. But there are also a lot of processes that can be easily or not so easily, but can be electrified. And I think this is something that we should avoid, this blanket statement, industry cannot be electrified or heating cannot be electrified. I think heating is even much more of a no-brainer because we have the technology, we know how to do it, and we know that it's better for air pollution. Again, I'm putting again climate and people at the heart of that conversation because they seem not to exist very much in other people's argument. But clean air is also very important. We lose a lot of people in Europe, especially in Central Europe, because of bad air and air pollution in cities. And like cleaning heat is a fundamental part of that. And I think that these are things that are low-hanging fruits. And it's not because it's in 5% of the processes or 10% of the processes you cannot get rid of gas that you should abandon the goal. And maybe one thing that bothers me a bit is when we use Pakistan as an example, because Pakistan is a very different beast in terms of its political economy and its energy dependency. And let's not forget that in 2022, the EU was buying LNG shipments that were bound to Pakistan and that had to go back and come back to Europe. As a result, Pakistan suffered huge blackouts, was in a very dire situation. So it's obvious that now they're trying to cope with that and sign long-term contracts. I don't think it's something that we should take as an example for the wider world gas bonanza. I think Pakistan is a very bad example if we want to use that.
Okay, noted. Just also before I bring the others, the investment case for electrifying industry, how do we encourage investment in that? Because that is very difficult when, it's cheaper to have gas, it's much easier.
Yeah, I think this is also a matter of mobilizing private and public resources. When we see, the amount of GDP that is needed to actually deliver the transition, it seems like a lot, but it's actually, especially if you put together private and public financing, it's with political will, you can do it. And I think we should also look at the cost of importing. I think we're importing, if between now and 2040, for example, we'll import more than 800 billions of fossil fuels in value. So, getting rid of that, getting rid of fossil fuel subsidies, because we're still pouring billions of euros in every member states to support fossil fuel use. All of that frees up money that can be invested elsewhere. And I think, if you see it as a zero-sum game, obviously it seems like a big thing, but actually it's very doable.
Sure, please.
Just building on that, and we're still open to ideas, but this is exactly the discussion that we'll be having in the Affordable Energy Action Plan and the Electrification Action Plan. What measures can we take in the current environment to speed all of this up, to make it attractive for this electrification to happen? And a lot of the issues revolve around the current cost of electricity. Partly this can, and one of there's all sorts of things being talked about. One is the perverse taxation regime in the relationship between taxation of electricity versus taxation of gas. Now, there are perfectly good historical reasons as to why gas wasn't taxed very highly, and all the taxes went on to electricity. But the world has changed, so that's an easy tool for member states to use. We're looking at the role of network tariffs and different levies and just how they're imposed on on electricity prices. And then there are the savings that come from a fundamentally more efficient electricity sector, whether that growing efficiency comes from greater interconnectivity, much smarter use of existing infrastructure, and the growth and penetration of a flexibility market, which can literally save billions in terms of cutting price spikes and so on. So we do envisage electricity becoming much more affordable through the implementation of everything that Mark is talking about. And that will be the chief enticement for industry and households and transport sector to electrify.
Benjamin, I mean, what picking up on Tom's point there, if we're going to feed ideas into this, it would be great to hear yours. What sort of levers could the Commission pull to incentivize you guys to put even more investment into electrifying and the kind of quotes greener processes?
I barely received this question, so I probably could list a lot of topics, but I really believe that I personally would value much more as a bigger room for competition. I still say, sorry, I want to relate back. I agree you that those technologies which you refer to are available. But we as Europe, we cannot afford it. Because the cost of it is so high that if we would do this tomorrow, we just don't have enough money for that. And I have a certain level of criticism on the European energy system. Because we are a private company and we compete every day, almost without any subsidy. We get PPAs in somewhere for our renewables. That's a kind of subsidy. But we have also merchant renewables in our portfolio. We were in Germany, we were one of the first, if not the first company who went out and we made a green hydrogen offer to the market because we wanted to shortcut. Everybody was talking about hydrogen. And maybe I want to share this hydrogen example that explains very much how I see the problem. Hydrogen is potentially one answer to this debate, what we heard, because it's a chemical energy. In theory, can be used. It's a green solution. And then the debate comes whether it should be a green, a blue, or a gray, or maybe a purple, or whatever color we talk. Because there is no such as one silver bullet here. Everything lies in the details. That's what I'm trying to emphasize. And what we did in Germany, and that's how a private competitive sector works. Okay, we said maybe it's aligned with the direction. We believe in it. Let's try. We bought in a company. We bought 50% of a startup who had a facility, who had a project plan, but needed a equity investment to build a green hydrogen. But we said, okay, no, we checked. Everything was in place. All good. We were waiting to push the FID button to the story. But we said, okay, let's sign at least few contracts. We didn't say that we should sign all the offtakes. We said at least we should go out to the market. Everybody was talking about hydrogen. That was 2 years ago. So let's go out. Let's sign few binding contracts because we didn't want it to run the risk completely alone. We saw all the industries talking about this green transition. They were all excited. First, we were signing MOUs. We were more than 100 industrial players who signed the MOU. And then we said, okay, you know what, guys, now let's turn this into binding. And that was during the gas crisis where the gas prices, natural gas prices were much, much higher. Nobody signed a binding agreement. And then 1 year later, we sold the company. We are out. We turned, we went, we tried, we worked on 2 years. It didn't work up. The price levels which we saw there were significantly, not just significantly higher than the natural gas, even at that time. We talk in kilograms. That was a 10. Our price was 10, 12 kilograms, which is an insane high price. They cannot afford. That was the green. This is a nonsense. We realized, but I realized this once we finished the mathematics and once we tested the market. It do not mean that hydrogen is a stupid idea. It do means that the current technology, with the current market structure, with the current regulation, doesn't add up for the solution. And maybe, I don't know, I believe that the very long-term future is power. But one way maybe to solve this hydrogen solution is that let's start with blue hydrogen. Let's create the liquidity. The cost is 1/3 of the blue hydrogen, but it's still 2-3 times higher than the current natural gas prices. So we still have to convince industry to pay twice as much for the same energy what they use. And that's a question whether legislation or a green belief of a given industry could convince these buyers to pay this extra money for that. And I just emphasizing two things with this. One, everything lies in the details. I think to talk on a principle basis, it's very, very difficult. I think we by now we know the arguments back and forth. And I see already both. So let's pick few directions, and I can line up behind any good idea, and I'm like dreamings. But then let's work how we can bring down the costs, how we can be more efficient. Because if we are not going to be competitive, we cannot afford to dream. We will very soon not have the money in Europe to dream. We still have the money, and also in the energy market, I feel that the next few years still favoring us. Means I think there will be an overproduction. That's our corporate estimate. Means there will be oversupply. So as a European buyer, I think the market will be more valuable in the natural gas in the next 2, 3, 4 years, unless something happens in Asia, which is not predicted. So means somebody starts to buy. But it's very, very likely. Let's use this. That's also one example. But we need details, and we need reliable rules and a little bit more pragmatism.
Yeah, very interesting that we should grab this opportunity while the market is as it is. Samuele, you want to come on this hydrogen?
Thank you very much. Hydrogen is like the monster of the Loch Ness. It's coming from time to time. The first one to have talked about hydrogen to energy was John Haldane in Cambridge, the 4th of February, 93, sorry, 102 years ago. Next week, it will be 102 years ago. Same idea, wind electrolyzer, hydrogen. And then it has been followed by the Nazi, because they knew that they lack liquid fuels. And so they dreamed to produce hydrogen, and they understood rapidly that it was a no solution, and it's why they make coal conversion to liquids. And then it started again with the Commission in 1960. Why? Because we decided the Euratom Treaty, and at that time everybody was convinced that everything will be nuclear. But Mr. Cesare Marchetti, colleagues from the Commission, arriving in ISPRA, say we will have so much nuclear energy that it's ridiculous to use it for the 22% of electricity. He said we need to use for 100% and not only for electricity. So he said we'll need to use it to burn it to flames. And we start to work in ISPRA on that. I joined the Commission in 82, and I was involved in that. And after that, it came back again. It's far away, and it come back again with Mr. Prodi, because his brother was a physicist, and Mr. Prodi has been convinced that it is a solution. It was in 2000. And then it's come back again in 2020 with Mrs. von der Leyen. Hydrogen will never be produced by electrolyzers. Never, ever, for a very simple chemical reason. There are two sources of hydrogen in the world. Hydrocarbons, the simple one is methane, and water. To produce hydrogen, you need to split the molecule. It happens that I'm a chemical engineer, and I look at the equation. Thermodynamics, not the Commission, not the Parliament. Thermodynamics say that if you want to break the water molecule, it needs 7 times more energy than to break the methane molecule per mole of hydrogen. 7 times. It's why electrolysis is a very old process. Nobody is making that because it's a nonsense. When you have methane, a global fuel, which can produce hydrogen, and indeed, the 130 million tons of hydrogen which are produced every year are nearly produced by gas and a little bit by coal in Indonesia and in China. So for the production. To burn hydrogen is like eating with burning Louis Vuitton handbag, because it's a precious molecule. You cannot burn a Louis Vuitton to produce heat. And we cannot burn the precious molecule, which is the base of all the chemical industry. It's a nonsense, total nonsense. It will go nowhere. If you want more details, because I put all the details in my book, The Hydrogen Illusion, €15, and you will know everything.
There we go. Nice little plug there. Thank you, Samuele. I'm glad we're having such a lively debate. On that note, I'm actually going to, I've had, unsurprisingly, as a result, many questions online. And I think there's a good one on this topic, and that'll give the audience some time also to think about their questions. Someone online has said, while adoption has been lagging, the Commission and many others put quite an emphasis on boosting blue and green hydrogen production. And so to Tom, what do you think are the chances for larger scale adoption and a realistic timeline for hydrogen in the EU?
Am I not committed to say that I think the current timelines and quantities are what can I say, are things we've committed to. And there are investments, there are developments, but I think for me, it's a misconception that this is the only available route to hydrogen. This is the route to green hydrogen, and the pathways and the definitions of green hydrogen are what the Commission is putting forward. This is what we think it's legitimate to push for, to subsidize, to drive forward. And it's a very clear part of the end game of what net zero can look like. That's not stopping anyone else from following different pathways, from developing a hydrogen infrastructure or a hydrogen economy based on anything else, based on molecules. So I don't think we're constraining there. What we're saying that this is the green pathway. If you want a definition of what hydrogen looks like made from renewable energy, then this is it. If you want one that uses another source, feel free. So I don't think we're constraining the development, but we're promoting one in particular because that's what's green. That's what will contribute to net zero.
Fantastic. Any questions in the room? I'm hoping we've got a microphone at the ready. No, gosh, the online audience are very much more active. I will continue with them. Actually, I should, before we go on to more on the online, I feel like, Raphael, you haven't really had your say on the hydrogen debate before, and where we should sit on this and how feasible you think it is, because I saw, we do see many projects not actually reaching FID. We see delays. Benjamin's example is a very good one. So actually, what is the realistic prospect, do you think, here from your point of view?
So yeah, for once, I'll agree with Professor Furfari on the fact that hydrogen is probably a very precious molecule, and we had maybe a hype or some kind of idea at some point that hydrogen would be everywhere. You would burn hydrogen to heat your homes, to power your cars, to power your trains, to I don't know, your lawnmower, anything. I think it's much more complicated than that, and the costs are very high. It's never going to be as cheap as gas, so it cannot basically replace gas on a one-to-one basis. And like greening gas in general is probably a mistake, because also biogas is the same idea, where it's always going to be more expensive than the fossil gas that we're using currently. For us, the approach is a bit different, is to say it can happen, but whatever we do, we need to be very strategic in how we use it. And it's true that it's a way to keep burning things without emitting CO2. So it's a way to really keep some combustion processes while being climate neutral. And if we want to do that and we want to use it for that, we need to really focus on hard to decarbonize sector, those sectors that cannot be electrified at all, and that we want to keep making in Europe should use hydrogen, because then you're able to do it in a clean way. And there is actually a market for that. There is actually people asking for clean products, or products that are not wrecking the climate. The question really is how much we'll have, by when. It's probably 2030 is probably maybe a too short time horizon to see any meaningful volumes. So I think this is a question as Benjamin was saying, it's a bit of a virtual question at the moment. There is no real market, no real volumes, nothing. It's all virtual. And we'd probably have to wait maybe another decade to see it and to have this debate again, and maybe with a more grounded reality in there.
Great. Well, we can reconvene. You wanted a very short comment, Samuele.
In the commission, first he was a director in DG Environment, then he became an advisor in DG Energy. Jürgen Henningsen, do you remember Jürgen? Sadly, he died 2 years ago. He wrote a very caustic article on hydrogen. And he said two things. First of all, do we still have people reflecting in the commission? A former member of the commission. And second thing, he mentioned cannibalization. What's mean the cannibalization? When you produce green electricity, you put it in the grid or in the heating system, but you cannot put twice in the hydrogen production. So to believe that we are going to produce hydrogen with green electricity, first of all, we should have 100% of green electricity, and then we will see. And that's why this notion of cannibalization is, we have to keep that in mind.
That's a very fair point. There's one question actually, and we sort of danced around the topic of geopolitics and so on in gas supply, but one person's asked, how have recent geopolitical and economic events impacted the EU's energy security? And indeed, is there a realistic proposition that the EU can totally move away from Russian fossil fuels? I just wondered, Benjamin, from an industry point of view, if you think that's reasonable prospect, and then perhaps we can bring in Tom on what the hopes are for the roadmap to move away from Russian fuel.
I think in a very, very short term, it would be very drastic if we would move away from that. So the EU is still buying 50 billion cubic meter gas from Russia in a form of pipe gas and LNG gas. I think I'm talking about simple supply demand calculations, what we see. I think that Central Eastern Europe can manage and can cope under most of any weather scenarios with the shutdown of the Ukraine pipelines, as we see, not just short term, not just this winter, but also long term, so we can refill the storages, because that's the challenging point, we believe, whether we can refill summertime the storages for the next winter as well. But that assumes that the Turkey stream is in operation. If the Turkey stream would not flow, then at the moment with the current LNG infrastructure and in Greece and in the Balkan, the supply would be not enough according to our calculations. It's a little bit question who is consuming how much. Maybe I want to give a little caveat that the discussion, though, it's in a different range now. So if we face a cold winter on a European scale, like a few degrees colder in average, and probably the demand effect is higher than the total effect of the Ukraine pipeline last 2 years delivery was. So we again talk a little bit about some assumptions. We have to assume things, and there is a lot of assumptions behind these statements. But summarizing, so from a European perspective, the supply security crisis has been solved. This how we see until the Turkey stream is flowing.
How is the Commission approaching this question, especially as you plan for the roadmap away from Russian fossil fuels in March?
Yeah, I mean, to summarize what you're saying, the result depends on global supplies and our demand, and there might be a scenario there. But from our perspective, all the parameters you list are relevant, but we have, I think, the largest storage capacity in the world to help us cope with demand peaks. We've had record filling of our storage capacities across the whole of the EU. We've never been more interconnected, including west to east gas flows, than ever before. And we continue to use and build on our import relations with all our gas partners, whether that's US or Norway or Algeria or others. So I think we are going quite fast in terms of ensuring that all the right supply side measures are taken to ensure that we don't face any kind of crisis ever again, if I may be so bold. In terms of Russia, yes, you're right. We reduced gas imports, direct gas imports by 40%, which is pretty good over 2 years. We're proud of that. But you're right, there's still both pipeline to the east and LNG coming through. We do plan on the anniversary Repower EU, we do plan a publication which explains why we want to go further, and we do want to reduce further Russian imports of both gas and oil. And we will build on the existing measures we have. I haven't seen the draft, even the draft document yet, so I can't go further than that. I probably shouldn't anyway. But no, the full intention is to carry on with the message that we no longer find Russia an adequate partner in gas trade and want to distance ourselves as fast as we pragmatically can and possibly can.
Thank you. I think that the best example is Poland. Well before the war in Ukraine, Poland decided not to import any more gas from Russia from 2014. And it's not just because you decide not to import that you don't import. You need to organize yourself. First of all, they created near the German border an LNG terminal, Schwenice. Second, they with the support of the Commission, built a connection between Klaipėda in Lithuania to Poland, Lipol, sorry, Lithuania, Poland, a connection from Lithuania. And then at that time, it was still allowed because the parliament have not yet thought that we should prohibit to make pipeline. Mr. Juncker planned for the interconnection project of priority. We, the Commission, finance a connection between Denmark and Poland to bring gas from Norway, Denmark, Poland. That means that Poland do not need any more gas. We need to organize our security of supply. And Poland is a very good example. You see that the situation in Slovakia, it's a drama for Slovakia now. It's their fault. They have not organized themselves. They should have bought long-term contract with anybody in the world to bring gas in the terminal of Kark and then to have the gas. So that means that we have to admit that there is a lot of fossil fuel in the world and we need to be prepared to ensure the security of supply because we cannot continue to depend on Russia, of course.
Sorry, Raphael, do you want to also?
Yeah, again, I'm hearing arguments that, focus on security of supply. I think we should go past this concept and really think about energy security and resilience. And, there is more than one way to be more resilient and more energy secure. It's not because you lose your main supplier, Russia, that you need to go to every other supplier to ensure that. It's a bit of a nonsense to me to say we'll be more secure if we rely on external partners that we don't know which trajectory, we don't know what they will be doing. On the short term, we were very happy to have US LNG. That's a fact. That's not a question. But I think that we're completely disregarding our own agentivity, our own agency. We are able to decrease gas use. There are very easy steps to do that. You can have more energy efficient homes. You can electrify a lot of uses. This is the best and the most efficient way because it goes directly into the European economy. You're not putting billions to Qatar or ExxonMobil or other companies. You're putting money into the EU economy to insulate homes, to be more efficient. All of that decreases your gas use. And I agree, Slovakia should have organized itself. And okay, supply is one thing, but I don't understand why we should only be obsessed by supply, right? There are other levers, and demand, decreasing your own demand is obviously a way to do it.
Yeah, one last comment on this before I move on to the next.
Kind of closing remark type
Sure,
of comment,
sure.
but I want to put the same debate into a different context. That I would approach the problem from a financial availability perspective a little bit. Because here, I don't know who has numbers in your mind. There were a few estimates, but globally, but it's also in an EU level. We talk about thousands of billions. These words which we were saying, the choice between these ways cost thousands of billions. That's the size, that's the magnitude we talk. And none of the states nor the EU Commission has this money without the private sector, one. But even the private sector is challenged to provide such amount of financing. And I'm a big supporter to have dreams. But what I'm saying, first we have to find out how much money we have for our own dreams. And then, because we don't have money for all of that. We really have to pick somehow more pragmatic our dreams, what we want to achieve. One. Second, we should really reach them, because we are dreaming a lot, talking a lot, we are investing a lot, and we are achieving little. That goes also self-criticism in this. So I would work a little bit backwards. How much money Europe can afford to follow their own dreams against the world? And there is some nice amount for that. And then I would scale. And if we do it smartly, then we could pick dreams which are increasing our security of supply and turns ourselves even more competitive than today.
Okay, big dreams like that. Just to turn to a slightly, should keep dreaming. Just to turn to a slightly different topic before we end, because it's actually one area, and we've had a few questions on this and we haven't touched on it at all. It's actually the role of biofuels, bioethanol. We've had a few questions on. Maybe Tom, you could give us a view on how the Commission sees developing policy around biofuels in this mandate, and then we can bring in some of the industry view and so on. Yeah.
Okay, can I begin by rejecting the dream analogy? I don't think the Commission is a dreamer or a nightmare creator. I think we are being pragmatic because we do believe that there's an existential requirement to address climate change and to cope with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. These are real things, and we are developing short-term pragmatic solutions that are as cost-effective as possible. That's the driver for everything that we're doing, I would say. And the same applies to bioenergy. We've got objectives and a trajectory for the way bioenergy should evolve. There are multiple pieces of legislation which ensure that our exploitation of bioenergy is done efficiently and as sustainably as possible. So from back in the day, we had biofuel sustainability criteria, and we've got various regimes. We've now got the Union database to help track and ensure that the bioenergy that we're using is sustainably sourced, with tracked through a robust regime. But at the same time, we have a research program which is helping industry develop much more efficient techniques to ensure that the bioenergy resources we have actually go further. There are gains of 20, 30% in efficiency that can come from new innovation in the bioenergy world to make our fuels go further. So I think we have a safeguard in terms of the environmental regime to ensure that the exploitation of the resource is done well, and we have an innovation drive to make that resource go further. But that's our prospect for reaching, for instance, the 35 BCM target for biogas by 2030, for instance, and we'll be building on that in the future.
Just one comment. I didn't use dreaming as a negative comment, really. I think dreams bring the world further. So I'm a dreamer and I like dreaming. So I think dreams are good. Just we have to pick our dreams. The
pragmatic dreams. Raphael, are biofuels a pragmatic dream?
I'm not sure, but I wouldn't again be too dismissive of it. I think it's time has to tell basically if our strategy on biofuels is the correct one or not. For us, when we look at biogas, when we look at biomethane, to be very, very precise, we're seeing, again, dreams about, it flowing everywhere and basically replacing again on a one-to-one basis from the fossil gas that we have to these kind of green gases. All evidence points that it's going to be probably more expensive, less abundant, much more local. We probably wouldn't have biogas traveling all throughout Europe. And that's something that also changes a bit the reality and the paradigm we are in. That being said, the 35 BCM target was floated and it's still an official target, though non-binding. So I'm really wondering where we'll be in 2030 and to see basically if we're close to it or not even close, because I think the two options are possible. What's for sure is that the place of gas in general, if you get rid of fossil gas because of climate, because of how expensive it is and how dangerous it is on the geopolitical scale, you wouldn't replace it with nearly enough green gas anyway. That would be the bottom line.
Samuele.
Just a very fast comment on the biogas. I believe that the subsidy is too high overall for the industry should be reduced. That would mean less biogas, but there is a room for biogas in the value chain in some local solutions.
I will come back to biogas. Dreams. The problem is that we are dreaming since 1973. We are not dreaming because of climate change. We start to dream because the first oil shock in 1973. So it's 51 years, 52 nearly, that we are looking for solution, cheap solution. Solution, it's plenty, but economic solution, I do not dream anymore after 50 years, because people, engineers, do not become intelligent because of climate change. We were not stupid in the past. And officials of the Commission were not stupid. We didn't find solution in 50 years. So bio, we have a problem with farming, the residues. We cannot dump them. We need to find solution to avoid those wasted from farming and from the agro food. So yes, we need to do something with that. And sometimes when we talk about fact, we agree. All the bio use or production are local. You cannot transport it. Yes, you can transport it, but it's too expensive. So it needs to be used. It needs to be used locally. It needs to have a factory locally. You cannot have a chemical plant like in Antwerp. You need to have small unit everywhere. In the book that I mentioned, I put a formula, chemical engineering, showing that to be economic, you need to have large plant. When you have small plant, you cannot be economic. So yes, we need to find solution for the waste. Well done, but it will never be economic. So we need to find subsidies for that. And anyway, it will not change completely the geopolitics of energy. It's good because we have a problem, we can solve it, but we have to pay a lot.
We'll need to keep trying to find solutions, at least even if we don't make it. We do have time for one very last question, perhaps. So I'd want to give an option to anyone in the room at all before gentleman at the back.
Good evening. Thanks to Matt and Public Affairs for organizing this event. My name is Eberhard and I'm in Brussels for more than 20 years watching EU energy policy. I also happen to work for a company called Axpo, which is Swiss-based. My question is, like, 2024 was a very interesting year from a political point of view. We did not only have the European elections, but most importantly, we had the US elections. And whilst we lobbyists are waiting for the clean industrial deal to be published, we have a lot of time at our hands, and we had a look at what the incoming or likely incoming US Secretary of Energy has as views when it comes to energy and climate policies. And I would say they're exactly opposed to what we have been doing in the EU for the last 5, 10, 20 years. How confident are you that in this competition of policies, the EU will win as compared to what the EU is planning over the coming years?
Very good question. In fact, someone online said, what is the EU's answer to drill, baby, drill? So maybe that's the similar vein. I don't know who would just, Tom, are you happy to start?
Well, I can start because, I mean, fundamentally, and we've touched on it, there's the reason why we're doing any of this in the first place, which is we think it is the only appropriate response to climate change and to showing the world that we can, indeed, that we think we must reduce emissions. That's why we're doing all of this. Related to that, I saw a statistic that popped up on the web the other day that non-federal measures within the US, whether that's California or New England or wherever it is, the sum of those measures, non-federal measures, are expected to deliver up to 60%, no, I think over a 60% reduction in emissions by 2035. So let's also reflect on the fragmentation in the US, sometimes more fragmented than the EU, and the fact that it's a 4-year period. There are very different attitudes across the states, and some of them are doing some very good things to reduce emissions significantly. And then we'll see what comes with the next 4 years. And we'll also continue to see the effects of climate change and whether these become more impressive in people's minds, and the relationship between what we do, what our policies do, and climate change becomes clear even in the US.
So anyone else want some quick thoughts on the US policy angle?
Yeah, just to say that I think we have now also market forces that show the direction of travel. And, you can have political posturing, you have performative discussions from President Trump, but the business case is quite clear on, gas is expensive, clean is probably cheaper in many aspects. There was also an interesting statistics the other day for the EU showing that without the energy efficiency improvements that we had between 2000 and now, we would use 37% more energy today. So, when we're grappling with the price of energy, showing and seeing that we're more efficient, that we're using way less energy, therefore the bills are smaller and the use is cheaper, is really a good case to show that, this is the right direction. And, going back into, rolling back, canceling or going against investor certainty is probably a very bad move in Europe, because we've been able to set a direction of travel, and people, businesses, and member states believe in that and trust us to do it.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for a very lively debate, and I'm glad we had like a very divergent range of views, but it's good to all contest each other and test out all the theories and dreams, and bring pragmatism also to the debate. Thank you all for being here, and to the online audience. I believe there might be some refreshments outside. Yes, I'm getting a nod from the back. Excellent. So do stay on and continue the discussion. And many thanks for coming, and thank you for the panelists.